Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. I'm Katie Allred.
And I'm Kenny Jahng.
We want to help you become a better church communicator.
And this is the place we're going to talk about strategies and best practices for your church.
Let's get started.
Hey folks, it is that time again. It's Friday afternoon. We are ready to go. I don't know where we're going. Seth Muse is in the house. Where are we going, Seth? Tell everybody.
Man, I have no idea. What are we doing?
I'm rearing to go. I love getting together with you every single time. First of all, it's one of those things. Let's explain our relationship, Seth. It's one of those things where people say, I actually had someone last week say, the conversation was so organic. How many years have you known Seth? And here's the fun fact of the day. How many times have we met in person, Seth?
Less than 5.
Yes.
Less than 5. Maybe 3, 4
it's
times.
It's one of those things where the interwebs has done its thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool to see. Like, I have a lot of friends that I've met online that I only see a few times a year, maybe. And that's if I can get, a church or somebody to pay for me to go to a conference and see everybody, And it always feels like I always say that when I go to like that church conference or something like that, it's like going to a high school reunion that you want to go to.
That you want to go to.
Yes. And that's what it feels for me. It's
yes.
Great. It's awesome. Great community.
Well, that's what I love about social media. That's what I love about podcasting, because in today's day and age, we can do this side by side. You're in Texas, I'm in New Jersey, and yet we are actually having fun with what we're trying to do. And that's help everyone out there be a better church communicator. That's the whole purpose of this podcast. In fact, from the beginning, Katie Allred, who helped co-found this group, if you talk to Katie, she thinks of this group as family. And I really think that is a really great way to characterize our church communications group. It's a big family. We've got almost 22,000 people in the Facebook group alone. But if you really meet each other in person at any of the conference events or even offline, you'll understand that the kinship and just the generosity between community members is fantastic. Yeah. So if you're brand new to the community, welcome. Again, my name is Kenny Jahng. I'm sitting here in New Jersey. Seth is on the other side of the map, down in Texas.
Yep.
And again, I've only been down to see Seth a couple of times, but every single time we start with a bear hug and we say goodbye with a bear hug. It's just been fantastic.
That's because we're both bears.
Maybe. And so today we're doing part 2, right? The whole purpose of today's podcast is to sit down and continue the conversation we started last week. And that was to go over the 10 unwritten rules of social media that Seth has penned, put down on paper. And we went through the first 5 last week. And today we're going to go through the rest of the list. And again, I hope that you guys are ready to chime in, leave some comments in the comments below, because this isn't a definitive list. It's just one of those conversation starters, a reflection piece, something to get the conversation going. Seth, why don't you just quickly rattle off what the first 5 rules the first 5 unwritten rules of church social media are?
Sure. First, we said don't like your own posts. Makes you kind of look lame. Not to get political, because it's just not fruitful. Stay positive, because nobody likes a negative Nancy, Debbie Downer. Like and share as much of your people's stuff as you can, but be careful. We talked about commenting and when it's appropriate to do that. And
coming from the church's account, right? That
commenting from the church, yes, and sharing stuff. And then we should not spam our wall. In other words, oversharing too much. So use some of the features like carousel or posting as an album on Facebook, things like that.
The other thing about spamming, let's talk about that last 2 things before we get to the last 5 rules. There's always debate in, I think, church teams, and especially those that are a little bit less educated on how social really works in relationship development. But there are pastors and leaders who say, hey, we're only going to talk about our church stuff 100% of the time. Why are you sharing other people's things? Why are you even tagging or commenting or interacting with other organizational accounts across town, other nonprofits, the mayor's office, the schools? Why are you even sharing some other stuff that has nothing to do with Jesus explicitly. Can you just share, like, what's your thoughts on that? And do you have any general rule? I think it changes all the time based
Yeah.
on context, but do you have any general rule, like how much should be our stuff, and then how much should be other stuff, fun stuff, topical stuff, other stuff?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the rule is it's kind of getting into our first one, number 6 here. But before we get to that, I want to share this. Relationships are multifaceted. There's more than just a passing of information between two entities that designate you as friends or having some sort of understanding of relationship with each other. When you and I talk, I mean, yeah, we're online, we're hanging out, but we're sharing ideas. But I also find out about, your kids' soccer and, your daughter's school.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
those have nothing to do with Jesus per se. But, when we talk about our faith and we talk about what's going on in the world of marketing and et cetera, there's just so many things that we discuss that bring us closer together in relationship.
Together.
Yes. Yeah. And if you want people to have, and this is going to sound like a little bit of a stretch, but stay with me, but have a relationship with your church as an organization, to feel like this is not just some faceless machine that cranks out stuff for them to consume. You want them to have a relationship. And why would you spend all that time with your voice and your branding if you didn't have some personality that your church kind of has that attracts people to it? And it has one, whether you like to admit it or not, it's there. You may not have defined it or know what it is. And a lot of times it reflects some of your senior leadership and how they are. But it's there. And when you can capture that and share that on social media in more ways than just the serious stuff, it's a much more valuable relationship that people have with your church. And so on social media, to have things that don't have anything to do with, quote, Jesus or faith or salvation, things that the church is really about. It's the same thing as if you went to your neighbor's house and you just immediately hit them over the head with gospel. Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Are you a Christian? It would be kind of weird. You don't start with that. You don't always talk about that. You work it into regular life. And I think that the church has forgotten a little bit on how to deal with regular life with all this teaching that we've tried to do to just remove people from the world they can't remove themselves from. And it's in the world, not of the world. Like, we still have to be in the world. It's like we have to engage with it. And that's kind of how relationships work. So the first one I had was abide by the 80-20 rule.
Yes. Rule number 6, right? Rule number 6. Yeah. Abide by the 80-20. Let's talk about what is the 80? What's the 20, Seth?
The 80 is the inspire, posts that are about them, encourage, share scripture, tell stories about what's going on, share testimonies, just things that would enrich people's lives to the direction you want them to go, right there. Like, you're not asking them for anything. And the 20% is where you're asking them for something, right? Mm-hmm. Sign up for an event, come to a thing, join us for a service.
20%. Call to actions, basically, right?
Yeah, real hard call to actions. Yeah. So the deal is that most people probably didn't follow your church on social media because they wanted to know what was going on. Now, there's a lot of times I've learned about things that are going on because of social media, but often it's because I see a post like, hey, we're having a great time at this thing. Oh man, I forgot that was happening. Yep. That's not them going, on Sunday, July 4th, we'll have this thing, blah, 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 and you should come, and here's the link, and here's how to sign up. It'll cost this much. I mean, that's kind of what websites are for. Just send me the website. And when I want to know what's going on, I'll go to the website, or I'll email somebody, I'll look at the calendar. But when it comes to social, I'm really not there for that. It's not one of the main reasons I'm there. And most people who follow your church are probably the same way.
Yeah, I always say it's kind of like when you meet somebody for the first time at someone's dinner party or at some event. Are you trying to be a boring person that just talks about yourself all the time? Or are you trying to be dynamic and interesting and empathetic and get the read of what is on everyone's mind right now? And those are the types of things I think, look, it is, at the end of the day, we are relationship managers. Yeah. We're not technologists, right?
Right.
And so social media really helps, I think, weed out the people that don't get it, and then rewards the people that do. And so that
And
80-20 rule is great.
And I think with social media, we're realizing more and more is that it is a tool for creating relationships and
Yes,
culture and atmosphere and this personality of your church. It's not there to really get something from the audience. It's there to create something in the audience. And then when they show up at your church, it's like they get
absolutely.
it. You know, it's like,
Absolutely.
or when they're out at their jobs, they just get it. You know, it's a way to cast vision without having to say, here's our vision. You know,
Right.
it's just so rich and versatile, but we don't use it that way. We use it as announcements. So the 80-20 rule is just basically a simple start guide for those churches, which are many, who struggle to flip flop it and do 80% announcement and 20% other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely don't want to do it the other way around where it's 80% about call to action. It's
Yeah.
about me, help me, sign me up, donate to me, me as the church, right?
Yeah,
So,
and last
okay.
thing about that, the story brand, again, because it's such a good thing. People don't look to your church to be a hero with a weakness. And if you constantly need something from them, then you're a weak hero. You're not a guide. You've got everything for them. You got it taken care of. You don't need them for anything. You're just helping them. Right. And
Absolutely.
when you have
Absolutely.
that mentality, it shows on social.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to the second rule we're going to cover today, but it's actually number 7 on the list of the 10 unwritten rules for church social media by Seth Muse. So what's number 7?
I just did a hard no automated responses.
No.
I know there are some times where an automated response might be okay. But I just, for me and what I was doing, just none, just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Just it could go wrong so fast. You know, there's such a high rate of error, or somebody asking for prayer and then you tell them about an event, you know, because it's automated and you think about that. You know, there's just so many things that could happen either in a messenger, setting up a messenger with a bot to respond. I mean, if there's something like, hey, want to help you out, here's some options, that sounds like a good idea unless someone just messages you and goes, hey, my marriage is falling apart, how do I get in touch with, you know, the marriage ministry?
Yeah. Well,
and
I mean,
and their
I
response
do
is,
think,
hey, we love you, how can we help you today? Like, well, I already told you that. You know, now you're not.
yes, you don't want to, that empathetic voice is not the play. Pastoral care is not supposed to be automated. Now, I will say there are ways to use automated messages, especially in the Facebook Messenger bot world, that we are using with churches. However, it's in combination with the live monitoring
Yes.
and pushing in there. So there's definitely ways to do it. You're supposed to use technology to scale personal relationships, in my view. But you're correctly, totally true that you should never be outed for an automated message, and that impulse to even just do that basic "thanks for following us" type of response. You just don't come off personal. That was the intent, to come off personal, but no, that's not the best way to scale your personal relationships using social media. Okay, let's move on to number 8. What's rule number 8, Seth?
You need permission to take and post photos of kids. I know I talked about earlier sharing things that were already generated. They've already put it out there. So it's a little bit different. But when they're coming into your building, you're taking photos of them at a professional level and using them on your website, on print materials, things like that. You need permission to do that. And I'm not sure all the rules on this, so maybe you can speak into this too, but I know that we had posted, hey, when you enter here, you're understanding that there's going to be photos taken.
Yeah.
That's a good start. I still don't know if that legally covers you. But it's a good start. And I think whenever you do use a photo of a kid, one of the things I used to do is I would just send the photo I wanted to use to our kids ministry and say, is this a foster kid? Because we were a big church, right? I had lots of kids with photos. And I'm like, this is a great photo. This kid looks perfect for this image I want to put out for this deal on the website or whatever. But always run it through your kids ministry. Is this a foster kid? Is there a reason we should use this? Are they even here? Is this, something that we have permission? And they'll let them reach out to the family, make sure it's okay. And once you have the family's permission, the parents' permission, then you can post. So it's 2 steps. Check with your kids ministry, and if they say it's not a foster kid, it's good. You still make them reach out and check, and then
in my experience, what we've also done is we've also made it generally known that photography is fair game. However, if you want to opt out, because almost
Yes.
every child environment that you have in a church today comes with some sort of name tag for the kid.
Hmm.
And so what's an easy way is if they do opt out, and you don't want to be photographed as a person or child, you typically use some sort of marker, a sticker, or symbol, or
Hmm.
the simplest way is just use a different color Sharpie marker. So
Yeah.
say everyone's blue, you might use purple or green or something like that for the kids who don't want to be photographed. The parents don't want them to be photographed. And so that your photographer sees that and is using that subtly
Yeah.
as signals. No one is outed or feels self-conscious when the kids are using name tags. And more
Right.
importantly, the other rule that we've seen, I think work well, just a general rule of thumb, is that you try not to be able to match a full name to a child. So you never want to
Oh
show
yeah.
the full
For the
child's
name tag. Yeah.
first and last name with the face, right? So you want to break that up in different
Right.
circumstances. There's ways to do it. You can always Photoshop at the end of the day.
Yeah. You just blur it
Um,
out or something.
yeah, but typically you don't want that combination, right? Because the whole point is online safety,
Hmm.
and you don't want a predator or somebody else trying to piece all those things together in a single photo. And so
Yeah.
that's just a general rule of thumb. And then where there's no permission involved, typically, or you're not exactly sure, um, using photos where it's not their faces but backs of, might be groups,
Yep.
or from the back shot into the front, and using them to illustrate that there's an audience where they're not the actual subject matter, but they're part of the setting of the scene, of that it's a children's
Hmm.
environment. That usually works well. There's tons of other ways and ideas, but I think you get the point.
Yeah.
We just need to be sensitive for children in this day and
Yeah.
age, and
And that's the point. Just be aware of how you're doing that. Have a plan to cover yourself. If something goes wrong. So for liability, other things, but just
absolutely.
to keep
And
safe. Keep the kids safe.
it's just one of those things. Communication usually solves most problems. And so
Hmm.
if you're talking about this as a team, and you come to a general agreement as a team, as a general rule, and you actually codify it and put it in writing somewhere in a Google Doc or someplace, so your volunteers who are taking photos, your staff members who are taking photos, just understand that rule, and so that the leadership of the church sees it, understands it, and follows suit. You should be kosher, right? You should be safe. But the whole point
Yeah.
is, you got to plan for it. You got to talk about it and walk through it so that everyone's on the same page.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Uh, Rule number 9 out of 10. What's the
Mm.
ninth unwritten rule of social media?
Silence is loud. Silence is loud. And what this means is that for your social media accounts, whether it's your pastor's personal account, your church account, you'll pick as a church like which platforms are best for you, which ones do you want to invest in and post on. But you know, if you're going to do that, you have to commit to that. And it's when you go for a while and you don't post, it says a lot about you. It says like, this is not worth following. This is not a valid platform to waste my time with this church on, to interact with this church on. And so many people have just posted, like, they'll just buy graphics and then they don't interact with people. You know, if you're not going to interact with people, then there's a good chance that you're going to miss all the things that go along with that.
Absolutely.
And so you might be posting even regularly, but you're not saying anything back when people respond. It's a dead channel, and they're going to realize it, and they're not going to pay attention to you there. The other arc of this is, like, if you have a pastor who wants to speak about how the dangers of social media from the platform, but is not involved in it himself personally,
Oh, pet peeve, pet peeve.
it says to the congregation, or especially upperly mobile people that have are paying attention to this kind of stuff, like, why should I listen to you about how to deal with life? Because a lot of my life is lived out in the digital space, which you
Yes.
clearly have no interest in being part of, nor do you have anything to tell me about it. You read an article about how dangerous something was, but you don't really seem to understand it. So I'm not going to trust you. The article you read might be spot on and you're correct, but because you don't seem to have any presence anywhere, it actually does hurt you. I know there's going to be argument about that one, but I really believe that. I really think that, you should be active somewhere. Not, if nothing else, just Twitter. Just be active on Twitter. It's the easiest one that people can at least access.
Well, and you have to understand the culture and the language, right? You can't come up to it and say, hey, I've been on the Facebook this morning, and when I was on the, I was twittering, and you can't use the language incorrectly, because you lose the trust of your audience pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's a great rule.
I had a GIF with this of Steve Buscemi. He's dressed up like a kid, and he walks out in this locker room and he goes, "How do you do, fellow kids?" And that's just kind of how it sounds when you get up and talk about, hello. And he has a shirt that says music band on it. It's pretty funny. But that's just the image you put forward when you try to speak about things that you have no clue about, and it's so obvious.
Well, one of the things that helps in this area, right? So the rule itself is basically, hey, look, it's 2019. We're going to 2020. If you're not on one platform and trying to understand it, where culture is, basically 100% of culture is out there. You're not on it. It's time for you to actually do the work of trying to get closer to your audience, to your community, versus just selfishly saying they need to come to you. If you really want to have that relationship with your community, you need to start to understand how they talk, how they live, how they communicate and connect with each other.
And we're not asking you to, go show us your dance moves on TikTok. I mean, we're like going, hey, post a photo.
Wouldn't hurt, but yes.
I don't know. It could hurt some people, pretty damaged hips, things like that.
Yes.
But man, I'm just saying, like, post photos of like, we're praying for you, or post images of I'm studying for this week's message, or there's a lot of things that pastors can post that have to do with what they're doing that people would want to see. And, they just have to get with your communication director, find out what that is. It doesn't have to be great. They're not expecting you to be a design guru. They're not expecting you to be the best at social media. They just want to know that you're there and you care.
Oh, absolutely.
And that you're part of it,
One of the things, Seth, that I actually do in coaching leaders is, because there's a lot of leaders who tend to be a little bit older and they haven't caught on to the technology, right? They're not digitally native. Yeah. So one of the first things we do is we don't teach them how to be involved on socially for their organization, for their job. Mm-hmm. What we teach them is social media for the WITHM. WITHM is what's in it for me. Mm-hmm. And so I think that people who are new to social media, relatively new, or who haven't mastered it yet, or appreciate it, but haven't figured it out yet, the rhythms of social media, it's because we haven't unlocked the WITHM for you, the what's in it for you, right? So we typically, for coaching clients, find out, what's your hobbies? What's your passions? Do you like golfing? Do you like cooking? Do you like guitars? What do you like personally in your off time? And there's almost any given subject. There is thought leaders out there, authors, celebrities, influencers, teachers, resources. There's a community out there at this point. Yep. There's a long tail game for almost every single interest. Let's get you involved in that. And you know what? I think the people on your team would respect you even more regarding social media if they knew that you were really having fun with the fly fishing community on social. Or if you if you do carpentry in your garage on the weekends and you're connecting with other people who are making really fun and fantastic stuff out of wood. Those are the types of things where once you unlock the value of community and connection through social media, then you can start to reimagine and dream what it could do for your church. And typically that's a much more successful pathway for people who've never used social media before.
Absolutely. And it feels more natural to do it that way too. You don't feel like an idiot, like a poser.
Correct.
And I think that's a big issue for pastors. We feel like, we have to go out here and be this social media influencer type. We're like, no, just please don't do that. There's plenty of those. Do something else. Do something only pastors can do in a way only pastors can do it. Go. Yes. And that's what we want. We need that in the space anyway. I mean, we need more of that kind of voice out there. So your voice is needed. It's just, don't think that just because you can't do it at some professional level or some other expectation that you have for yourself, just find your voice and find your group and connect with them. That's what.
And the rewards are amazing, right? Finding community online. The rewards are amazing.
Yeah, they are.
You'll find friends like Seth and I who, without social
Absolutely.
media, probably would never have met each other and developed this relationship for sure.
Yeah.
And here we're like brothers now, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's really, it at the end of the day, it's the connections that matter. It's not about how many followers you get. It's not about all this glamour and glitz. It's literally about people, relationships, and finding
Mhm.
other people that really resonate with you and understand you, and you understand them, and just have fun together. So that's a great one. Okay,
Yeah.
so we are rounding out the list. Seth, you
Last
put
one.
down all 10 rules, these unwritten rules for church social media. What is number 10 on
Number
your
10,
list?
spelling and grammar are super important.
I think
It
I'm guilty of
drives
this one.
it drives me crazy. Like I've always been a good speller. I have been. I mean, that's just something I didn't realize I was blessed with that, but I'm blessed with that. Grammar. There was a time when I was like, I think I might be a teacher, and what I wanted to go get my degree in was English and teach English. That's always been something I like to read. I like literature, but a lot of people don't have that, and we have to do things like get Grammarly, get things that can help us out, because if you make a simple mistake on a disposable graphic on social media, you're going to hear about it. And it's going to be embarrassing every single time. And I know that, and I know that, I think even once, Kenny, there was a time where you posted something that had a spelling error in the graphic. And I sent you a message because I'm not a mean troll and comment on it right there in
A
public.
private
Like,
message. You
oh,
sent me a
dude, way to
private
go. I
message.
sent you a
Yeah.
private message to say, hey, man, did you know you spelled it? And your response was, I know. They'll respond better because they'll correct me. Something like that. And I was like, are you kidding me? I think you were just trying it to see what happened. It was on your personal Instagram or whatever. And I was like, that is so funny because it's so true. Everyone sees a mistake and they're like, oh, I better tell them. And I better do it publicly. And I better do it first. Oh, wait, everyone's already done that? Let me do it again just to make sure they heard.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm guilty of that. It's it goes to this rule, and I don't think you don't invoke it frequently at all, because I
No.
agree with you. We need to commit to excellence as communicators,
Yeah.
because we're representing not just ourselves but the church, the brand, the community, and we're representing to outsiders, not just insiders. However, there is something about social media where the whole point of social media is to be social. You need to have a give and take, and you need to have space built in for the other voice. And so the general rule of thumb that this, I think, goes under is, are you making space for your conversation partner, or are you just taking up all the air? And that goes to listicles especially. This is kind of like today's list of 10 unwritten rules. The job for us as publishers, as facility managers of a community, is not to be comprehensive. It's to start the conversation.
It's
And
to
so
stir it up.
sometimes I'll do a list of the 7 rules or something, or the 10 things, and I'll go back and I'll delete one of the most critical, most fundamental rule, and I'll leave it out on purpose, because when you read a list and you see something that's blaring, just clearly missing, you just can't help but comment and say, hey, you forgot about this, or you need to think about this, right? It just begs for engagement, right? It's a
That's
little bit
just
like
like
an open loop, like an open story loop, basically.
Yeah, and that's an insight into the insane or genius thin line of Kenny Jangh's mind and how he works, because it is brilliant, but it's risky as well. That's why we get
Yes.
along so well.
No,
But
look, you don't do it all the
when
time,
we're doing like
right?
social media, though, no, it's like a one-off deal, and that's kind of like what Elevation did once. They just made the ugly post.
Yes.
They have all these incredible looking posts, and they make the really ugly one. And everybody was like, what is this? Well, it was one of their top performing posts of probably the whole year, because they knew if they did that, it'd be disruptive. And that's kind of an unwritten rule, is disruptive works, like you don't want to do it all the time. But with your regular post, though, getting back to this, the spelling
Yes.
are super important. The biggest one is like with your, and your, or sorry, there, and there, and your, the different
It's
verbs.
an
It's and it's, yeah, and just things like that, where if you're going to write captions, this is a copywriting kind of pet peeve. I can understand graphic design mistakes. There's a lot going on there, but with writing English, like that's the language unique, for the most part. So work hard to make sure that you're spelling words correctly. And I even know there's like a
Well, you
trend.
don't even have to work hard, Seth, right? That the whole point in today's day and age, you don't need to work hard because
You
of
really don't.
the tool that you use is what again? Let's share it with everybody.
It's
What's the
Grammarly.
And so tell us exactly how it works. What is it
Well,
and how does it work?
there's two different ways you can use it. One, you can just get what are they called for Chrome, an extension,
Extension.
and it like reads everything on your page in Chrome, and it works with Google Docs. It works with web pages and email, and if you're using Gmail, stuff like that. But there's also Grammarly that's got like an app that runs through your entire system, a little bit more robust that you can buy. I think it might even have a free version of that, but it basically reads everything that you write and type and corrects it, or it shows you like suggestions, and it says this is the wrong use of the word your, and gives you the right one, or it corrects, and then you can update for some of the slang words that you use a lot that are not in the dictionary, but they're words that you're going to use a lot. Like Instagram is not in there, so I think that recently they just added it in, so now Instagram capitalizes and makes it look right. But there are words that you're going to come up with, like it might just be native to your next steps class and you want to capitalize it, and then it's going to say this doesn't need to be capitalized. Well, you can either hit ignore, or you can add it to your library and they know that's a proper noun for the thing you're doing. So it learns as it goes, as much you teach it, and then it just helps you write better copy in social media, in your emails, in on your website, when you're editing, just kind of everything. Super great tool. I don't know any other like it, and I wouldn't know what I would do without it, because even though like I said, I'm good at spelling and grammar, constantly is correcting my mistakes. And there's sometimes where I'm like, no, sorry, we're gonna leave that because I like the way that sounds better. But it'll change your sentence structure if you want. It gives you good options for being professional, as what level of professional you want to be.
Now, there is paid and free accounts. There is a free version where you can
Okay.
install the plugin extension into Safari or Chrome,
Yeah.
whatever you're using. They actually have I don't know if you know this one. This is my super tip. Um, they have a Grammarly keyboard for iOS
No
for your
way.
iPhone. Yes.
I
So
didn't know that.
if you switch to the Grammarly keyboard, you actually then get the prompts for the spelling mistakes and the grammar right there as you're writing in real time.
I'm doing
Again,
that.
it's free. So there's a free version. The premium versions, I think, are worth it, and you can see that Grammarly the sales a couple times a year, so you can get it 50% off, etc. I think it's worth it for your team. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely something that over time, and they give you stats and they give you pattern recognition of the rules that you basically are breaking over and over again. So
Yep.
in theory, your grammar should be getting better, right? You should be improving your writing, but it's definitely something that your team should have. It goes
Yeah.
beyond just the spell check. I know Google Docs has spell check and grammar. That's the very basic that you should be doing if you're not going to invest in something like Grammarly. But I think the whole rule, case in point, is we need to commit to a certain level of excellence because we are publishers. I
Yep.
know this is a texting culture and everything is in acronyms and everything's on the fly, and you see those email signatures that say, hey, I've got fat thumbs, pardon my spelling errors. But there is some sense that from the institutional level, from the corporate church account level, that
Yeah.
we should, I think, and this might be up for debate. If you think otherwise, I'd love to hear your voice and chime into this discussion, because I think, Seth, there might be some people in the post-millennial, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z community and beyond that may think that, hey, spelling's not a big deal anymore, that we are all in text and culture. I don't know.
Well,
But
I would say,
for my part right now, we have to protect and actually elevate our publishing.
yeah, I would say that, I would disagree with that person that would say it's not important, because there is a level of authority that comes with being. Because here's the deal: you put out a post that's great, and you misspell one thing in it, and somebody latches onto that who disagrees with you, and is going to focus in on how dumb you are, right? Even if that doesn't mean that you're
Yes.
dumb, but
Yes,
they can
absolutely.
totally try to um, negate the other thing that you're discussing. And this happens all the time in like those threads about politics we tell you not to get into. So you say something or misspell it or do something, use the wrong sense, and they're like, hey, you can't even use the right word form of
Yep.
your. What do you know about politics? Like, that has nothing to do with each other, but that's how people think, So you got to be careful with it. And it's like, don't give them ammo they don't need. And I would also say that if you're going to make a mistake, do it on purpose so that it's disruptive, Kenny Jahng style, and not accidental, and give them reason to think that you might not know what you're doing.
Well, I love the poster that you have. Keep clam.
Yeah.
And
it's right here in front of me. You can't
right?
see it.
Yeah.
So it's keep clam and proofread.
Yes. That's a very good rule of life to live by. So, hey, why don't we just recap all 10 rules that you've written down for us, the unwritten rules of church social media. Seth, why don't you just recap all 10 rules quickly?
Okay, here you go. Don't like your own posts. Don't get political. Stay positive. Like and share as much of your people's stuff, but be careful. Don't spam your own wall. Abide by the 80-20 rule.
Yes.
No automated responses.
No.
Permission to post photos of kids. Silence is loud, and spelling and grammar are super important.
Love it. Love that list. Again, everybody, I'd love for you to chime in. What are the rules that you love that Seth has written down, these unwritten rules? What are you guilty of? Maybe you've had some epiphany that you've been going along and liking every single one of your posts back in the history of your entire social media accounts, and you woke up today and said, what's going on? We'd love to hear your responses. What resonated with you? What pet peeves do you have out there that we should add and write additional rules for this list? This is the place for you to get involved. Again, if you love our podcast, we'd love for you to smash that like button, leave a review so that more church communicators can learn about this resource as a podcast. And also, if you haven't been to our Facebook group, we've got 21,000 peers that are ready, willing, able to help you become a better communicator. Seth, I can't just say enough about the generous posture of the people in the Church Communications Facebook group. If someone hasn't heard about it yet or hasn't been in there yet, what do you think? What would be the 1-2 benefits or things that you've gotten out of it over the last year or two?
Well, first of all, it's kind of what we've discussed here. There's a networking, relationship building element to it. You just meet people and you kind of know who knows what they're talking about, and you can ask questions and they'll chime in, and it's really helpful in that sense. But in the other, it's like you hear people ask questions that you probably have, and actually see how others can chime in, and it's very much a community of support, and it helps you feel like, hey, I'm not alone. I think that when I was in pastoral ministry, there wasn't really a lot of places like there are now.
Yeah.
And I felt very, very much alone a lot of times. And with communications, it started online, this community, of building our space, and really started in that group in a lot of ways. And just, it feels very much like I never feel like I'm the only one going through this. And that's huge.
Absolutely. So that's what the community is about. I'd also like to invite you. One of the things that people have been discovering is that we actually have a store at our website, churchcommunications.com/store. Here's a little self-plug. This is the place where you can actually get some mugs and actual t-shirts. We've been seeing some t-shirts show up at conferences. I love the one that I have. It just says create, post, repeat. Create, repost, repeat. That's our mantra, right, as social media. But there's one that I saw that a couple people have gotten, and it's this big shirt, and it just says, it's in the bulletin. It's in the bulletin. It's just one of those things that I think it says, it's in the bulletin, and there's a subhead. It says, been there for weeks. And that's the mantra that only church communicators can empathize with, I think, as we console each other in doing what we do tirelessly for the gospel, week in, week out. So if you haven't been to any of those properties, we invite you to join us. The other thing that I'm going to invite you to, you're going to start to hear a lot more about, again, is we actually have a premium group in our Facebook group. So there's an actual premium group. It's a paid membership group that gets an extra level of support and attention and resources. There's free church social graphics that are put in every month. There's office hours put up every month. And you're going to see Seth in that premium group much more, trying to become a guide and a resource for that community, because Seth has tons of wisdom, both from the marketplace and the ministry world. That's one of the things I think both Seth and I have in common, is that we worked in secular marketing in the marketplace, and we also worked in the ministry space for communications. And that intersection allows you, I think, Seth, for both of us to see the best practices in the marketplace, in the secular world out there, and be able to translate some of that and bring that goodness and really filter out what's working, what's not, and say, how do we apply this to church and ministry and this space in particular? I think that's what gets us excited. And having, I think, the ability to unpack that and have more space and time with the people in the premium group is something that we just both enjoy. And you're going to see more of Seth in that group, because he's going to lend himself as an expert and resource to your church. So if you haven't heard about it, currently it's actually on Facebook. It's an experimental group. There's less than, I think, 30 groups worldwide that has this subscription beta feature. Facebook actually has announced that they are abandoning support for it. So we are in transition. Seth and I are moving this to our website. So there will be a more robust place, because it's very limited. If you're part of the group, you see it's very limited inside the Facebook module, because the product managers of Facebook started to build out this premium group feature, and they didn't complete it. And now they're backtracking just a little bit as they rethink their model there. So we're going to move it out, because we want to serve you guys. We've got I think several dozen, I don't know exactly the number, but we got enough people in there that the conversations are healthy and robust. And it's a place for peers to spend a little bit more intentional time with each other. So we're really thankful that Seth is going to show up there and help us lead that conversation in a much more intentional way, so that, again, the mission for us here at Church Communications is to help you become the best communicator you can be for your church and a herald of the gospel. So Seth, thanks for chipping in that capacity. I think it's going to be a great 2020 as we look ahead.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
So that's it for this week. We'll chime in again. Merry Christmas to everybody. I think one of the things that we're going to take off probably a week here from the podcast, but I think Seth and I might be able to squeeze in one more roundup of the year, or FAQs, maybe an AMA of some sorts. If you have any questions, email me, kenny@churchcommunications.com, and let us know what you want to hear from us as we round out a fantastic year together for the Church Communications community and the podcast in particular. Seth, why don't you just leave before we sign off for the day? What is the best way people can get in touch with you? What is your preferred social platform and the handle, so that they can reach you and connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram is my Insta-Jam. So find me there at Seth Muse, and I can connect with you from any other place. If you wanted to join my podcast Facebook group or whatever, it's on Facebook, but the Instagram is the best way to do it.
Awesome. So Seth Muse on Instagram, Kenny Jahng on Instagram, but the place I'm hanging out these days is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just on fire. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can look me up, Kenny Jahng on LinkedIn. That's where I'm vlogging daily at this point. I'm trying to convince my buddy over here. Where is it? I feel like, yeah, there. I'm convincing my buddy Seth to hop into the vlogging daily world. He started on YouTube. You got to look him up on YouTube. But we'll see. 2020, I think I've been saying that this is video is the new black, and we got to go all in. And I'm sure you're going to see both of us on video much more as we go forward. Thanks for joining us. And we'll check you out here next week on the Church Communications podcast.